Blog Talk Radio.
The Chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Ineye Ujira Da Medinde Ujirafo Kwesi Ranehm Pata Akan Aquamumain Amaruka Etifi Mu Ujirafo Ujiramain Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black peoples. Today is Ujira Day, Purification Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehm Pata Akan. Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, people in the Western Hemisphere. Did I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We are opening up the chat room. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akan fo Nanasom on Joda on Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion of Nanasom, first and foremost because we are Akan, secondly because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan cosmology, Akan religion, culture, philosophy, and so forth, not only from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also from those individuals on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit who have been infected with white pseudo-religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and white culture in general, and thus their presentation of Akan ancestral religion is infected as well. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which deals with our ancestral origins. In ancient Kanat, the Kan land, the first land, foremost land, which is a title of ancient Nubia. Akan people originated in ancient Kanat, the Kan land, a couple of thousand years ago after the fall of ancient Kemet and northern Kanat, Egypt and Nubia. Some of our people migrated from those regions to the western part of the continent and reestablished the Kanat Empire, the Empire of Ghana in West Afuraitkai, West Africa. 1,000 years later, because of Muslim invasion, some of our people migrated from the Empire of Kana or Ghana further south towards the forest belt and savanna regions and reestablished ourselves in the regions of today's contemporary Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana, and reestablished Akan civilization, Akana civilization in those regions. And centuries subsequent to that, some of our people were taken from those regions and forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious traditions. Thus, the Akan ancestral religion is called Huinti in Suriname in South America, from the Akan term Huinti. In Jamaica, the Akan ancestral religion is called Obia, from the Akan term Obai. In the United States and North America, Akan ancestral religion is called Hoodoo, from the Akan term Undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. You find these terms also in the language of ancient Kemet and Kanat. In the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, you'll find that Undu means medicine from roots, trees, plant life. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. Undu is also the term for the offerings given to the deities on the altars of the spirits and so forth. In the ancient language, we also have a title of ancient Kanat, ancient Nubia, which is Undu, the Undu land, and the people being called the Undu people. So, of course, from ancient Afuraitkai to west, all the way to North America, we still call ourselves the Hoodoo people, using the term Hoodoo, dealing with medicine from roots, trees, plant life. We also use the term conjure, coming from the term kanche in the Akan language, meaning to utter incantations to bring down the spirit. Those same terms exist in ancient Kemet and Kana as well, with the exact same meaning. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Joda Monday nights. On Wednesday, Awukuda Wednesday night, we have Egwa Marketplace, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, the African Black community in a positive capacity, those who maintain their ancestral religious values and are informed by their ancestral religious values in their service to the community. So we've showcased a number of businesses, organizations, and institutions. Of course, over the past 6 days, this past week since last Awukuda, last Wednesday, the business of the week is Hoodoo Pharmacy and Conjure Culture Couture by Afia Asase Bretuo, and she came onto the show last week. She is the business of the week. We have in our Okom economic development model, which is an approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. Therefore, it is a holistic approach to economic development. Part of that process, and we published that document. You can download that document for free. Part of that process is what we call the Operation Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride. That means you make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds you would have potentially wasted with the whites in their offspring, and you starve the beast and feed the pride. You reallocate those funds away from the white business and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We target one Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution per week for optimal capital infusion. That's when you starve the beast and feed the pride. You take $10 you would have wasted at Chipotle or 7-Eleven or some other white business, starve the beast, and reallocate those funds to feed the pride and direct them to the business of the week. That's a transfer of $10 in capital from white businesses to a black business. When 1,000 of our people who are listening to our broadcast engage that process of starving the beast and feeding the pride, then that is a $10,000 infusion of capital, starving it from the white businesses and directing it to the business, organization, or institution of the week. When one black business receives $10,000 as an infusion of capital in the course of 7 days, they are able, empowered to hire from within the community permanently and immediately. They are able to expand their product lines and services to us to serve us at a greater capacity. It is a win-win situation. If we do not engage that process of starving the beast and feeding the pride, then we are leaving that $10,000 in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, and by default, we are financing our own oppression. So we must starve the beast and feed the pride on a weekly basis. So once again, the business of the week is Hoodoo Pharmacy, Conjure Culture and Couture, owned by Afia Asase Bretuo. You can listen to the broadcast we did with Afia last week and get details about the business and the culture and her approach to establishing that business, her journey to ancestral religious practice and so forth, and the restoration of our culture. All of that information on that broadcast you can download from the YouTube site, listen to from the YouTube site as well as the Blog Talk Radio site. That's what we deal with on Equa Marketplace Day on Wednesday nights. On Thursday nights, Yauda. Thursday, Yada Abada. Thursday night, we have Amansesew, Affairs of the Nation, where we deal with specific issues confronting us as an Oman, as a nation, specifically as ODWIRA, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We understand what an Oman is from a holistic perspective. A nation in the true sense is a living, breathing entity governed by specific forces in creation that gives it character. And the cells or the children of that nation, they work interdependently with one another, but they also serve the greater whole, that living, breathing entity of which they are a component part. We are cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, the organs that are children of the great divine body. We are cells within certain organs and glands of the Supreme Being and so forth. When we recognize that that organal structure is akin to an Oman, a nation, then we are cells within that organal structure. Yes, we work together interdependently as cells, but we also serve the greater organal structure of which we are a component part and the forces in nature that govern that organal structure. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, at some point we're directed by our ancestresses and ancestors to coalesce in a specific region of the Western Hemisphere, in a specific region of the Earth Mother's body. And we learn to interface with the Earth Mother divinities in this region of their body. We learn the unique manifestation and expression of the Orisha, the Vodou, the Untoru, the Abosom, the forces in nature as they manifest in this region, the Western Hemisphere, in this region of the Earth Mother's body. We learn to integrate and incorporate the plant life, animal life, and mineral life for food as well as medicine from this region of the Earth Mother's body. And then we blend ancestral blood circles in this region as we are interfacing with the unique expression of the divinities and the Earth Mother divinities, as well as the other forces in creation in this region of the Earth Mother's body. And taking in that plant life, animal life, mineral life, fashioning our bodies from these new sources in the Western region, and blending ancestral blood circles, drawing ancestresses and ancestors back into these new blended ancestral blood circles in this region of the Earth Mother in the West. Because of this confluence of activities, we have forged a locative identity, a unique expression of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit humanity and culture, born of our residence in this region of the Earth Mother's body, and tying ourselves and aligning ourselves with this region of the Earth Mother's body, and manifesting a unique expression of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture, religious practice, and expression, and so forth. So when we deal with our issues, we confront them, and we deal with them and address them from our unique cultural perspective. We deal with Amaniye, which is nationism, the purification of nationalism. We deal with nationism from the proper perspective of what a nation or an Oman is, which is a living, breathing entity. When we interface with the Abosom that govern this coalition or coalescing of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the West, then we have a unique expression, and we understand how to solve our problems based on who we are as a locative identified group. So whatever issues confront us, we resolve them. This is what we deal with on Amansesew affairs of the nation. So we can move together in a collective, harmonious fashion as ODWIRA, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Tonight is ODWIRA. On the ODWIRA broadcast, we deal with purification. ODWIRA means purification in the Akan language. ODWIRA means purification in the language of ancient Kemet. It also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. When we talk about purification, we often state that ODWIRA purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion. In this broadcast, we talk about how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. In essence, and we're not just talking about the Akan culture, but wherever Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African black people exist on earth, ancestral religion, no matter what expression it takes on the continent or here in the Western Hemisphere, such as Hoodoo, which is Akan, or Juju, which is Yoruba, Voodoo, which is Ebe and Fon, Grigri, which is the Bambara and Mindi traditions, Wanga, which is the Ovambo tradition, Ngengan, which is the Fang tradition, and Nganga, which is the Bakongo tradition, and so forth. Whatever manifestation of ancestral religion we put forward, we express, ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. In essence, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion is the ritual to incorporate in order to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We state that ODWIRA purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our ritual practice of incorporating divine law and restoring divine balance. We seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. That is the culture, the way of life of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African black people. We seek to execute our function in creation given to us by the Supreme Being as cells within the great divine body. When we make legitimate mistakes in that process, we engage the ritual process to incorporate law and restore balance so that we can get back on track with executing our function in creation without creating disorder in the process. We engage the ritual process expansive and contractive poles. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives as we seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. So we must purify ODWIRA concepts, culture, cosmology, ritual practice, understanding, because there's so much corruption, misinformation floating around with regard to our ancestral culture, religion, practice, cosmology, and so forth. So that's what we're dealing with on the ODWIRA broadcast. Tonight's subject is Heru-Set, equilibrating character through neutralizing lust. So we want to talk about this dual form of Heru and Set. Heru and Set are two Abosom, two divinities, deities, but in the specific unique form that you see, that we use for the image for the broadcast, you see here in this specific form that Heru and Set are united in the center picture. Heru and Set, two different heads on the same body. So that transforms the understanding and gives you a proper understanding of who these divinities are and what their roles are and what their functions are with regard to equilibrating character through neutralizing lust. Very often you'll see, or people will put forth the false notion that Set represents disorder, Set represents evil, Set represents criminality and so forth, and therefore you have Heru, which represents the higher self, and Set represents the lower self, and Heru is subduing Set and so forth so that you can operate according to your higher self. And of course, that is inaccurate. Heru and Set are forces in creation. They are deities. They are Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, Ntorotu. The deities, the forces in nature, are literally organs within the great divine body of Amenet and Amen. The great mother Amenet and the great father Amen function together as one divine unit, the supreme being. They are called Nyamewa and Nyame and Akan. They're called Mawu and Lisa in Vodun. They're called Olokun, Olorun in the Yoruba tradition. Kati Eleo and Kolotiolo in the Sedufo tradition and so forth, the great mother and great father, supreme being. Within the great divine body, they have smaller organal structures, just like your body is a great body. You have smaller bodies within your great body that regulate order within your body. Those are the organs, and the organs give birth to smaller bodies, which are the cells. Within the great divine body of the supreme being, the organs, those who regulate order within the great divine body, those are the deities, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Abosom, and so forth. Ntoru, Ntorotu, also mispronounced Neteru, Netetu, and so forth. Those are the deities, the forces in nature that regulate order within the great divine body. And then the cells of those organs are plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African black human life. And of course, in the human sphere, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African black human life only. We are the cells of the organs, our parent deities, the organs of which we are a component part. When we serve them as cells, then we're serving the supreme being at the same time. When the heart cells serve the organ, their parent deity, their head divinity, their head Orisha, their head Abosom, their head Vodou, the head Ntoro, then they're serving the great body at the same time. When the liver cells serve their head divinity, the liver, of which they are a component part, they're serving the entire body, the great being at the same time. When we serve the divinity that governs our head, that we incarnated into the world with, that's assigned to dwell with us in the head region, when we align ourselves with that function in creation, then we're serving the great body at the same time. So, the forces in nature, the deities, are the embodiments of divine order in creation. They do not deviate from divine order in creation, as they are the embodiments of divine order in creation. So therefore, when you see Heru, when you see Set, when you see Set, Heru, and these various forces in creation, these are divine embodiments of order. And when we look at the functioning of these divinities, and you look, for example, in the body, they all have their shrines within the body of the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person. They have shrines within the Earth Mother and so forth. They have shrines in the stellar realm. They have shrines within the solar and lunar and so forth. So, for example, you'll find Set, as we talk about in our book, KUKUU-TUNTUM, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, as well as the Akan Abosom series. Set becomes the communicator. He is the communicator, the messenger of Ra and so forth, and Ra'at in the physical body. His center of resonance or his shrine within the physical body is the nervous system, the communicative structure within the body. When you look at Heru, he operates through the cardiovascular system. The major organ, of course, is the heart. So the heart regulates the flow of energy by pumping blood and so forth, the flow of oxygen through the flow of blood and so forth to all the different cells in the body. Heru's shrine within the physical body is the cardiovascular system, whose major organ is the heart. Spiritually, Heru regulates the flow of divine living energy as the king who assumes the throne. The king sits in the middle, like a spoke in a wheel and so forth, sits in the middle of society, regulating order within society. The capacity for the Afurakani, the king, as well as the queen mother, to regulate order in society is they have the capacity to receive the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at, the creator and creatress, and regulate its flow to all members of society. Just like your heart has the capacity to regulate the flow of blood and therefore oxygen and therefore life force energy within the oxygen to all of the cells within the body through its palpitations. The king or queen mother has the capacity to regulate the flow of energy to all members of society. They receive the energy of Ra and Ra'at, and they regulate its flow to us all. The nervous system is the communicative structure. It carries messages to the various organs and glands and tissues and so forth, those messages coming from the brain. And, of course, that nervous system is the World Wide Web inside the body. In the Akan tradition, Set is called Anansi, Kwaku-Anansi, or Wuku-Anansi. His symbol is a spider. And when you look at a spider sitting by a windowsill, if you come back at a later period, the spider would have woven a web that fills up the entire empty space of the window, and that spider can navigate the various roads of that web to any part of the empty space and dwell in any part of that empty space. He is regulating order within that empty space. No other entity can regulate the roads and different sectors of that empty space like the spider can, because he's woven or she's woven a web filling up that empty space. In that same fashion, Set or Anansi generates a web of Tumi, of power of divine living energy that permeates the entire black substance of space of creation, a worldwide web. And every planet, sun, moon, star, plant, animal, mineral, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit human has a position on that web. So we are all connected by that web of energy. And that divine spider, Anansi, he's called Eshu Legba in the Yoruba tradition, Legba in Vodun. He's called Anansi in Akan, or Kwaku or Wuku-Anansi. He's also called Awuraku or Owuraku in Akan. That becomes Ur-Hekau, the great one of divine words in ancient Kemet, which is the title of Set. Ur-Hekau becomes Owuraku in Akan, same divinity, same name. He governs that divine communicative structure, that worldwide web. He's the messenger, but they also say sometimes he's the trickster and so forth, but he's the communicator. He's the great divine spider moving through the various roads of that web. In the Akan tradition, the Yoruba tradition, they say, of course, that Eshu is the master of the various roads and so forth. This is where that's coming from. So when you have the nervous system and you have the cardiovascular system, these two major systems that work together to maintain the life and vitality of the entity, and also the communicative structure and the directions and the instructions coming from the brain sent to all different parts of the body through the nervous system, you have two major structures that work in harmony with one another. So when you see Heru and Set, you see that nervous system structure, the communicative structure, the great messenger and so forth, but then you also see Heru, the cardiovascular system that sends that life force energy throughout the system. Set is bringing that electromagnetic energy moving through the system, whereas Heru is carrying that solar fire that comes from Ra, and Ra has that radiant energy and moving that through the bloodstream, through the oxygen. That's the life force energy, but then you have that electromagnetic energy. That's the communicative piece. They must operate in harmony with one another. The nervous system is not evil. The nervous system is not a manifestation of disorder and so forth. It's just as important as the cardiovascular system. This is why we show left of center, we have Set and Heru operating in the same body, two heads coming out of the same body, showing that there's a balanced and complementary relationship between the nervous system and cardiovascular system. But then we also show in the left part of the image, we show Set and Heru. One is holding the planet of the south, one is holding the planet of the north. They're tied together around the Sema symbol, which is really the sternum that goes down into the lungs and so forth, the planets of the north and south, and they're showing the balance of upper and lower Kemet. That is not the higher and lower self. You're talking about the balance, like the two eyes. You don't have a higher eye and a lower eye. You don't have a higher ear and a lower ear. You don't have a higher nostril and a lower nostril. You don't have a higher adrenal gland on the right or a lower adrenal gland on the left. You don't have a higher kidney on the right or a higher kidney on the left. You don't have a higher testicle on the right or left or ovary on the right or left and so forth. They are in balance. Ma'an, ma'at, they are in balance. They are representative and a replication of balance. So this is what we're talking about. If you look on the right side of the image, we also show Set standing at the prow of the boat of Ra. Ra is seated on the throne, and then you see Set, who is spearing Apep. And Apep and his folds of his body, the great serpent, is trying to rise up and attack and swallow the boat of Ra and so forth, and Set is spearing or keeping Apep down. And Apep's great folds of this great serpent, which is under the boat of Ra, in the under quote-unquote world. Of course, we did the broadcast on Apep, and when they talk about Apep in the text of ancient Kemet, they say, "Oh, you great serpent, whose great folds in your body are like that of an intestine," because the sacred sanctuary of Apep within the physical body, the shrine of Apep in the physical body, is the lower small and large intestine, which is in the folds of a so-called serpent. When they talk about Set or Apep being the foul one, the one who is odorous, the one who sometimes seeks to attack Ra and so forth, the intestines carry feces. The intestines carry waste and so forth. They have a sacred function within the body. You're not in love with the waste, but it's necessary as a waste processing center. You need that great folded up serpent that's living within the underworld, up under the visceral section of the body, that takes the waste, processes it, and moves it out of the body. Of course, if there's an entity like a tapeworm that's operating within the structure who tries to rise up and attack and spit out, ammonia and so forth, and attacking other cells, that can lead to illness. So, of course, you have to use your life force energy to spear that serpent down, spear that tapeworm down, to keep that serpent at bay, to kill that serpent and so forth, so that you can maintain your life in a harmonious fashion. So the reason we show that image is because Set is in the boat of the creator of Ra. And, of course, Ra has the creatress as well. He is a servant of Ra, stabbing and killing Apep. Therefore, once again, Set is not the evil one of disorder. Set is an embodiment of divine order, making sure that criminality does not take control. So you have a balance between Heru and Set, a balance between upper and lower Kemet. You have a balance between the cardiovascular system, a balance with the nervous system. Now, if one gets out of balance, then that's where problems come in. If one becomes out of balance with these forces in creation, that's where misguided desire or lust comes in. It's not a representation of the deity leading you into lust. It's a representation of us cutting ourselves off from the dispensation of energy of the divinity, and then we fall into these negative behavioral patterns. And of course, when we talk about lust, that has to do with misguided desire. We have two major drives. We have a hunger drive, which when we fulfill that hunger drive, it allows us to sustain our lives on a consistent basis, moment to moment. And then we have a sexual drive, a sex drive, which allows us to maintain our existence through successive generations, inclusive of reincarnation. So the hunger drive sustains you so that you can continue to live throughout the course of your life. But the sex drive, of course, leads to progeny, which leads to the perpetuation of life, not only through your progeny while you're still living in the physical world, but as you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so forth, as a result of that sex drive, then eventually you will be able to reincarnate through your descendants, and that perpetuates not only them as a clan, perpetuates you through time, but also transcarnationally through successive reincarnations. So the hunger drive and the sex drive are sacred. They perpetuate life. When we talk about life on earth, in the real sense, it's sacred. It's the whites and their offspring who put forth this notion that life on earth is suffering. All human life on earth, or all existence, is suffering in transit. The nonsense they teach in Buddhism and so forth, and Hinduism, and people seeking to escape the cycle of reincarnation, or that's in the East, or in the West, they're seeking to escape the sinful flesh and get into heaven. That's the same corruption. Western Eurasian corruption, Eastern Eurasian corruption. It has no basis in reality. The whites and their offspring, yes, they're seeking to escape their sinful flesh because they're melanin recessive. Their flesh is perverse. They're seeking to escape the world because they're not natural within the world. Standing just up under the full light of the sun is harmful to the melanin recessive. So for them, the earth is punishment. For them, the earth is suffering. For them, the flesh is weak and evil and negative and all this other nonsense. That has no bearing on reality for our people. Asaseya, the fertile earth mother, Asaseya, the stern judgment of the earth mother and so forth. These two earth mother divinities, these are deities. They're divine forces in creation. When we are born through the agency of the earth mother divinities, we're born through goddesses. So the earth is sacred to us. The oceans, the rivers, the sun, moon, stars, atmosphere, inner core of earth, and so forth, all features of creation are shrines of divine forces in creation, embodiments of divine order. It is a sacred privilege to operate within the body of the great earth mother divinities. It's a sacred privilege for us to incarnate into the physical world. We love the earth mother, both earth mother divinities and creation itself. It's the whites and their offspring who seek to escape creation because they're not naturally a part, as cancerous cells or disfigured cells, they're not naturally a part of naturally occurring events and circumstances. So when we talk about the hunger drive, the sex drive, and so forth, these are natural drives. We come into the world, we're fashioned by Ptah and Sekhmet and so forth. We're given life and vitality by Ra and Riot and divine living energy. We're given being by Amen and Amenet, the great supreme being and so forth, to operate as cells within the great divine body, to perpetuate ourselves day in and day out, and to perpetuate ourselves over time through our progeny and through reincarnation and so forth. But if we get out of harmony with the deities, then those natural drives, those natural desires to consume that which we need to fuel ourselves and empower ourselves and so forth, as well as heal ourselves, and that which we need to procreate in divine harmony through the agency of Het Heru, through procreative activity, sexual activity, and so forth, the fusion of complementary opposites in a harmonious divine fashion. Those natural inclinations, if we get out of harmony with the divinities, the forces in creation, then those natural inclinations degenerate into misguided desire, which is the manifestation of lust. And the manifestation of lust in various forms sets us up for all kinds of destructive behaviors and circumstances and events. When we can overcome lust, when we can equilibrate our character and thereby neutralize our lust, we put ourselves back on the path of a harmonious existence. That is key to a harmonious existence. When we make proper decisions rooted in divine order, we overcome that misinformed and misdirected movement towards self-destructive, misguided desire and so forth. So how do we begin to equilibrate character and neutralize lust? First and foremost, we recognize who these deities are. For example, just to give another example, when you look in the Akan cosmology, and they talk about the creation of the universe, and they're talking about Odumankuma fashioning the first beings, they say that Odumankuma first fashioned the Essane, which is the messenger, the herald. So the Akan culture, the messenger, the one who runs throughout the empire or the nation, carrying the message from the palace and so forth to the people. That's the Essane or the messenger. So they say Odumankuma first fashioned the messenger, the Essane. Then they say Odumankuma then fashioned the divine drummer. The divine drummer in the Akan court is the one who's drumming ritually and so forth. Those drum beats generate the divine living energy of the deities and transmit that energy throughout the community. Of course, if someone is drumming at long distances, not only can you hear those drums, and of course we're talking about talking drums, so they communicate a message. We can speak through drum language. Not only do you hear the messages, but the vibrations themselves stimulate your life force energy. We know that sound vibrations have the capacity to move us literally. You can have sound vibrations that shake windows or shake your body or pound in your chest. Someone can sing at such a volume and a pitch where the sound vibrations break a glass. So sound vibrations carry power. So the divine drummer is not only one who communicates the speech of the Oheni and Ohema, the king or queen mother, but they also transmit the energy of the Abosom throughout the people. So they say first the Essane, the messenger, was created. Then Odumankuma fashioned the Chedema, the divine drummer, in the Akan court structure. And then Odumankuma fashioned the Afurakaitnit, which is the great divine executioner. So when we look at that structure, the Essane, the messenger, then the divine drummer, then the executioner, the one who protects and defends the court and so forth, we're also looking at internally the development of the embryo. The first thing that develops within the embryo is the divine messenger or the Essane, the neural tube that becomes the central nervous system. Then the second thing that develops is the heart, and later the cardiovascular system, and the heart begins to beat. That is the divine drummer, the Ochedema in the culture. And then later on you have the immune system developing, that is the Afurakaitnit, that is the great divine executioner. So in the Akan cosmology and court structure, when they say Odumankuma, which is Atem Kepra in ancient Kemet, he's Odumankuma and Akan, when he fashioned first the Essane at the beginning of creation, and then they say he fashioned the divine drummer, the Ochedema, and then he fashioned the Afurakaitnit. They're talking about the neural tube, which leads to the nervous system being fashioned first, then the cardiovascular system, then the immune system. So again, once again, these are sacred divine structures. These are shrines of the deities within our bodies. The nervous system, the central nervous system, the neural tube becoming the central nervous system, coming into being first, that's the elder, and then the cardiovascular system, the heart and cardiovascular system developing afterwards, that's the younger. Of course, Set, governing the nervous system, he is the elder, and then Heru, governing the cardiovascular system, he is the younger. So that gives you another piece. Now, we talked about the various organs and systems in the body as shrines of the deities. They take up residence in these shrines as centers of residence. Just like the ocean is a shrine for the spirits that animate the ocean, they take up residence in that structure so we can communicate with them. The sun, the various stars, the various planets and so forth, the black earth, the red earth, the core of earth, the atmosphere, fire, these different features of creation, these are all various shrines for specific spirits, deities to take up residence in so that we can communicate with them through. Just like when you set up a shrine in your home and you have a ritual sculpture for a specific divinity, when you engage the ritual invocatory process, that spirit comes down to take up residence in that sculpture for a specific period and magnifies the energy of that divinity, that's what we're dealing with. Just like someone can be possessed by a deity, a spirit gets inside the body of a person and moves through that person and communicates with the community. In the same fashion, when we establish physical shrines, they become magnets for the deities to take up residence in. When their spirits take up residence in the sacred sculpture of the shrine, that shrine magnifies the energy of the divinity so that we can communicate directly with them. Just like a cell phone, when you have the right frequency and the code and the connection, the phone itself is just an object, but then when you communicate through that phone, you're communicating directly to another individual. It is a implement or an instrument for communication. When we talk about shrines being magnifiers of the energy of the deities and ancestral spirits, we always use that example of when you have dry leaves on the ground, when the sun is shining on those dry leaves, they're just warm. If you place a magnifying glass in between the sunlight and the dry leaves, that sunlight becomes magnified and you can cause combustion. When you place a shrine in your home and it's ritually prepared and so forth, it becomes a magnifier for the energy of the Abosom who directed you to set that shrine up, the ancestresses and ancestors, the Nsamanfo who directed you to establish that shrine according to their specifications. So just like the sunlight moving through the magnifying glass, the output of the sunlight or the sun did not change. But when you put the magnifying glass between the sunlight, the sun, and the dry leaves, then the magnifying glass itself fused that energy and magnified that energy, and a combustion took place. It intensified the energy through that magnification. The shrines that we established for the deities and ancestral spirits in our homes and shrine houses and so forth, they act as magnifiers like a magnifying glass. The spirits of the deities and ancestral spirits who are connected to us, to our blood circles, when moving through those shrine structures, their energy becomes magnified and intensified in that space within our homes as well as within our shrine spaces and so forth, and we have a more optimal communication. The same is true with our various organs and systems. Every major organ and system within the body is a shrine of the various deities in creation. We've talked about many of these divinities and their shrines. When we talk about the nervous system and cardiovascular system, we're talking about that life force energy moving through the cardiovascular system that maintains the vitality of our lives and our cells and so forth, a major system. And then, of course, the nervous system giving us instruction, giving us messages, carrying those messages to every part of the body. If you get out of harmony with these deities, then the messages that would normally come through the nervous system to touch every cell in the body and so forth, if those messages are cut off or disrupted, then you get the wrong messages, and that creates disorder in the body. If you get the wrong energy flow or infusion of energy through the cardiovascular system, the wrong nutrients and so forth, then that portends sickness in the body. When you look at Set, who governs the nervous system, the electromagnetic energy moving through the nervous system, circulating through the nervous system continuously, that electromagnetic energy generates an electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field is magnetic. And that draws you to specific things and repels you from other things, just like a magnet on a table can repel another magnet whose same polarity is facing, or if the opposite polarities are facing, they jump together. There's attraction or repulsion depending on your polarization, so to speak. So if you cut yourself off from the divinity and you only have the residual energy because you're engaged in self-destructive behavior or lustful behavior, you cut yourself off from that divine functioning force. You're seeking to go in a different direction. The deity is pulling you towards a certain set of behaviors you're going towards another set of behaviors. You're going in the opposite direction. So you're cutting yourself off from the direction of that force that's governing you. And when you cut yourself off from that force, then the only thing that you have left to work with is the residual energy of the force. And then that's where problems come in. That's where lust comes in. So, for example, if someone is on an elevator and they have some perfume on and so forth, they get on the first floor, then they get off the elevator on the 10th floor, and they go to their place of business. And then you get on the elevator on the 15th floor, and it's empty, you can still smell the perfume. Now, the person is gone, so you don't have a direct connection with the person. You don't feel the person's energy. You're not in the same elevator. You don't feel the life force energy coming off of them and touching your aura, and you don't have a direct electromagnetic communication with the individual. But the residual energy, inclusive of that perfume that they had on their body and so forth, is still floating around in the atmosphere, so you can still pick up on some of that, but you're totally disconnected or divorced from the individual. You've never even seen the individual. And then if you breathe in some of that residual energy, because it's unconnected with that person, it can affect your sinuses in a certain fashion, but it's disconnected. If we're living in harmony with the deities that govern us, inclusive of Set and Heru, if we're living in harmony with them and our spirits are open to them and there's a free flow of energy from them through us, then we function in harmony with them, and the thoughts, intentions, and actions that we engage in are harmonious. If we cut ourselves off from them, for example, Set governs the nervous system and the various communications going to every cell in the body. He governs the nervous system within creation and the set of communications or instructions going to every one of us in creation. If we cut ourselves off from that divinity because we're seeking to engage in self-destructive behavior, and we're repelling ourselves and making ourselves repulsive to this force in creation because we're going in a different direction, now there's a split. Now there's a cut. We're not receiving direct energy from Set, that nervous energy, nervous system energy, and so forth. All we're receiving is the residual energy that was left over from when we were at some point connected, when we stopped, before we stopped paying attention or aligning ourselves with that divinity. So there's a residual energy that we're operating upon, utilizing to make certain decisions. And that residual energy that's cut off from the source, it begins to dissipate. It's no different than an apple falling off a tree. At first it was connected to the tree, and the life force energy of the tree is constantly vitalizing the apple when it stays, vibrant. When it's cut off from the tree, it looks vibrant and you can consume it for a certain period, but it begins to oxidize and eventually it begins to rot because it's cut off from the source. When we cut ourselves off from the source, that specifically with Set, who communicates all the proper instructions, if we seek to go in a different direction, we cut ourselves off from him, then the only thing we have left is that residual energy that we initially had of his, and we try to operate based on that little magnetic energy that's still moving around and disintegrating very slowly, and then we use that to make misinformed decisions. You can make misinformed decisions when you're influenced by other individuals physically. You can make misinformed and programmed by them physically, false ideas, foolish notions, foolish philosophies, and so forth, some based on ignorance, some based on criminality. And when certain of those individuals make their transition and they become discarnate spirits, if they were spirits of disorder, they're still the kind of spirits that hang around earthbound. They don't make the transition to the ancestral realm, living in the company of the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. These are the kinds of individuals who remain earthbound. They're repelled from the pristine ancestral community, and they can only hang around the place where they died, hang around the place where they were shot, and so forth. And when people move through those areas, when you're going through the course of your day and walk through those areas and move through those areas and move into a house and so forth where such homeless spirits are dwelling, they seek to influence you negatively just like they did when they were on earth. If they were a criminal on earth or a child molester on earth or a rapist on earth trying to influence you in a negative fashion, when they make their transition, They still have that negative mindset, that negative spirit set, and they're still trying to influence people. People who have a normal sense of spiritual immunity, they can repel those negative projections. People who are a little bit compromised or a little bit open or vulnerable, they begin to receive those negative projections, and they begin to be influenced by certain individuals, and that begins to influence their behavior. That's one way you can become influenced. That's one way some of our people become influenced even as children, as we've talked about in the previous broadcast. So when they have these unusual thoughts of engaging in self-destructive behavior or criminal behavior or dissexual, homosexual behavior, you have some individual who was a child molester when they were living on earth, they made their transition, that spirit is still corrupt. And from the time someone is a child, they attach themselves parasitically to that child and are constantly projecting those negative ideas. And whenever the child moves towards someone of the same sex, they're being pushed in that direction by that discarnate spirit. Whenever they move towards someone of the opposite sex, that spirit puts pressure on them and they feel an uneasy, queasy feeling and so forth. So such individuals grow up saying, ever since I was a child, I always felt negative when I got connected with someone of the opposite sex, but I felt pushed towards someone of the same sex. And it's absolutely true, because you have a criminal, discarnate, molesting type spirit who's engaged in that kind of influence. When you engage in ancestral religion, you can repel such spirits with ease, and you can get back to your normal self. And of course, no individual naturally, no Afuraitkaitnit individual has any inclination towards dissexuality, homosexuality. That's insane. But the same is true of murder, rape, theft, and so forth. You can be influenced negatively by discarnate spirits of relatives and non-relatives that can influence your nervous system, the shrine of Set within your body, that disrupts your natural inclination towards certain kinds of behaviors that are fulfilling of natural desires, meaning to consume foods and operate in a harmonious fashion, fulfilling those natural desires. And then you have misguided desires based on negative influence from external sources. But then you can also have negative influences that lead to lust from internal sources. That means the kinds of things that you've taken into your conscious awareness that you become obsessive about. So you have negative ideas, false ideas that have been projected in this society by the whites and their offspring, as well as brainwashed individuals within our own community. These false ideas, these false notions, false things that you generate in your own sphere of awareness. When you hold on to such things, then you empower such things, and then they direct your movements. They direct your actions. They become habitual and so forth. The mechanics of that process is key to this discussion of how you're led into misguided desire or lust from false ideas and so forth, and how to repel that. So, for example, if you have these false ideas plugged into you from the time you're a child about fictional deities like Jesus or fictional personages like Muhammad, Moses, Abraham, Buddha, Brahman, and so forth, fictional foolish ideas about black being inferior, white being superior, dissexuality, homosexuality being normal, and so forth, when you have these ideas that you fashion into forms or images within your mind, anytime you fashion a form or an idea that has luminosity and a geometric form and so forth, form and substance, that is an entity. Just like you can draw a painting that has a geometric form and color and so forth, that's an image, that's an entity. Every entity that is generated has its own electromagnetic field. So if you generate and hold certain images, thoughts, ideas in your sphere of awareness, and then you plug your life force energy into those ideas because you hold them in your sphere of awareness, then that little quote-unquote globe or that image, that luminous entity, generates an electromagnetic field that develops its own quote-unquote orbit and begins to draw you into its orbit. Now you have an electromagnetic draw to a false idea. Now you're utilizing your life force energy in a negative fashion. It's drawing you away from order, drawing you into the orbit of false ideas, obsessions, and so forth, and then you begin to engage in behavior that's representative of you being attached to a false idea that you were giving power because someone implanted foolish ideas in you and you held on to those ideas, you obsessed over those ideas, you went to sleep with those ideas, you reinforced them by communicating with other people with the same ideas, and every time you generate those ideas in your sphere of awareness, in your spirit, mind, and so forth, you're creating a globular structure that has an orbit that draws you into its orbit, and then you begin to engage in behavior based on those false ideas. And you get locked into that. That's the mechanics of being controlled by lust. That idea is cut off from the dispensation of energy of the forces in creation. If you are operating in harmony with the forces in creation, then false ideas are repulsive. If you drink pure water, then someone giving you dirty water, that's repulsive. As soon as it gets in your system, you throw it up, you cough, you reject it, and so forth. When you receive, plant life, mineral life, and so forth, and those nutrients that come from plant life and mineral life in the form of properly structured foods to consume and so forth, your body receives that, utilizes it, assimilates it, and so forth, and you're empowered by it. If someone gives you some substance like crack cocaine or something else, your body automatically rejects it because it's out of harmony with order. However, if you begin to introduce those corrupt substances in your body and force your body to accept it over and over again, you begin to build up a pseudo-tolerance for things that are out of harmony with order. And you cut yourself off from the plant life, mineral life, and natural things and so forth, and you're only dealing with that which is unnatural, synthetic, and so forth, and you become locked into that. In the same fashion, if you cut yourself off from the communication of the ancestresses and ancestors who are always trying to communicate divine order to us, the forces in nature, if you're not going out into nature, engaging in ritual, aligning yourselves with plant life, animal life, mineral life, and the deities, the Orisha, the Vodou that animate these different features of creation, if you cut yourself off from that and only focus on the foolish ideas that have been brainwashed or inculcated within you, and you cut yourself off from reality, cut yourself off from the natural free flow of energy from the forces in creation, and then you embrace foolish ideas, luminous entities within the sphere of awareness of your conscious mind and so forth, that creates an electromagnetic field around these luminous images. It's a magnetic orbit that draws you into that orbit, and then you continuously engage in behavior that's representative of what those ideas are trying to force into you. And then you follow lust. You cut yourself off from the force in creation, and you're following that discounted, misinformed little entity. And then you're following lustful behavior. Then that leads to self-destructive behavior. So there are texts in Kemet that deal with that reality. There are texts in Kemet that have to do with Heru and Set and the equilibration of these complementary forces and the rejection of discarnate spirits as well as self-destructive behaviors and so forth. One of those texts we're going to check out reading from chapter 17 of the Runu Pert in Heru, the so-called misnomer Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, and so forth. We're going to get into that. But the key, first and foremost, is recognizing that image you see in the center of Heru and Set with the two heads in the same body. You're talking about two complementary systems. The nervous system that generates that electromagnetic field, as the life force energy is moving through the nervous system, generating an electromagnetic field. That magnetic field manifests as desire, so you're magnetically drawn to certain things and you're magnetically repelled from other things. If you're living in harmony with Set, then his life force energy is constantly free-flowing to you, then the things that you're magnetically drawn to are based on proper instruction. The proper instructions that he receives from Ra and Ra'ed, he transmits to every cell in the body as the nervous system structure in the body. If you cut yourself off from Set because you're following conditionings, false ideas, false, teachings and so forth, and self-destructive behaviors from individuals who are disordered, you cut yourself off from that free flow of energy coming from Set, and you're only dealing with that residual electromagnetic energy that's quickly dissipating. because you are not connected with the free flow of energy coming from here, him that's constantly renewing you, then you're cut off from a divine force in creation. You're cut off from a divine embodiment of order in creation. That means you're cut off from the morality in creation. If you're living in harmony with Heru and that divine life force energy, that fire force of Ra and Ra'at moving through the circulatory system, constantly being regulated through the heart, pumping the blood, and the blood carries the life force energy, and life force energy is going to every cell in the body. When you carry that divine fire, you have the vitality to execute your function in creation, do what you came into the world to do, obliterate all obstacles, fulfill your function in the world, connect with other people who are on the same frequency, engage the nation building process, and so forth. You're full of that vitality and it's being properly distributed nonstop. Just like a heart beats nonstop, that vitality is constantly being received through the cardiovascular system from Ra and Ra'at. Heru is regulating that flow of energy to every cell in the body through his palpitations in the heart, and every cell in the body is receiving the proper distribution of life force energy because the heart is working properly. When we're constantly being fed that vitality because we're living in harmony with this force in nature, then we have the proper vitality within ourselves to execute our will, live in harmony with order, engage the nation-building process, connect with others, and so forth. If you cut yourself off from that kind of direction because you're following the misguided ideas and ideals of this society or brainwash individuals within our community who follow the ideas and ideals of this society, then you move in the opposite direction from Heru. You cut yourself off, then you're only dealing with the residual energy that's placed in you by these misinformed ideas and so forth. And instead of utilizing that vitality from Heru that's directly free-flowing from that force in nature into you, then what's happening is you're cut off from that free flow and you have a little residual life force energy, solar energy, and you use that solar energy, that power, to engage in self-destructive behavior. Instead of nation building, you seek ego. Instead of nation building, you seek to dominate other individuals. Instead of nation building, you seek to control and create structures that are not conducive to our development as a people, but something that sustains your own misguided desire for power and control and so forth. But when you're connected with the free flow of energy of Heru, that life force energy coming from Ra and Ra'at and regulated by Heru, that vitality you feel is connected to that deity, so therefore there's a morality, there's an order to that dispensation of energy. So you're connected not only to the energy, but the morality associated with it, and you make proper decisions. You cut yourself off from the deities, the residual energy left over from them is used in a self-destructive fashion. When you connect to the divinities, their free flow of energy that's constantly circulating through you, you not only receive the magnetic energy from Set and the fire energy from Heru, but it's also connected to their morality, their manifestation of order. So you have an ordered infusion of energy and you make proper decisions. Let's go to the text of Ancient Kemet, and it will pull together all of these different concepts so that we can see what is this notion of the two heads on the same body. In the left side of the image where you see Heru and Set working together in harmony, uniting upper and lower Kemet, uniting the two sides of the body, the two eyes, the two ears, the two kidneys, the two adrenal glands, the two sets of gonads and so forth for balance in every thought, intention, and action. How do we get to that point? How do we equilibrate our character and keep those two heads in balance so that Set can stab our pep in the boat of Ra as opposed to us being controlled by our pep and controlled by self-destructive, lustful behaviors that create disorder and chaos within our community. If you look in chapter 17, there's a very long chapter in the book of Coming Forth by Day, but we're going to read a specific section. And that particular section, so this particular text, just like the various texts, they call them misnomers, the Book of the Dead, because they will find these papyri buried with a specific individual. This specific papyrus is buried with Ani, but then there's another one buried with an individual named Nebseni. So they mention Nebsini's name in the text and so forth. So first they're talking about Ra, the creator who utilizes the sun as a transmitter of his divine living energy. The same is true of Ra'et. They use the Aten or Atenit as a transmitter of their divine living energy. They are not the sun god or sun goddess, but they use the sun to transmit their energy. So there's an invocation to Ra. Then they talk about what happened when there were entities creating disorder, seeking to attack Ra and attack the individual, and how they overcame these entities. And this is directly related to everything we're talking about. So first it says, hail he who is in the egg, talking about the sun, the Aten, shining from his disk, rising from his horizon, glittering above the sky, without second among the Ntoru, the deities, sailing over the pillars of Shu, giving winds of fire of his mouth, making bright the two earths with his radiance. So you're talking about Ra moving through the sun, shining, luminant, brilliant, giving life and vitality and so forth. It's also talking about the life force energy that's given to us and dispensed by us from Ra as well as Ra'et, that divine living energy within us, the little Ba bird sitting inside of us, the Ba or the Ba'at, the divine living spirit, that life force energy when we're living in harmony with order, its vitality is shining, is brilliant, is bright, it connects us to all other naturally occurring entities in creation, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, as well as the ancestors and deities. When we have that vitality moving through us, we're shining, brilliant, bright, glittering, and so forth. So they're talking about Ra shining in his disk, rising from the horizon, glittering in the sky, without second among the deities, sailing over the pillars of Shu, giving winds of fire of his mouth, making bright the two earths with his radiance. Just invoke Ra. Then it says, deliver Nebsini. This is the person who made this transition. Nebsini is saying, deliver me from the deity whose secretive form is two eyebrows like unto the two arms of the scales on the night of the reckoning of the destroying goddess. So Nebsini, when he made his transition, he said, hey, I'm living in harmony. I've been living in harmony. I live my life in harmony with Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. Because I lived in harmony with Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, I aligned my spirit, my Ba, with the great Ba, the great spirit, Ra and Ra'et. And because I did that, I was living in harmony with order, so therefore, deliver me away from the deity who normally would destroy those individuals when they failed the test of the balancing of the heart on the scales of Ma'at. Deliver me away from Amut, that divinity who would consume the spirit of the person. You can deliver me away from them because I'm proving that I live my life in harmony with the creator and creatress. And I made sure my divine living energy, my vital energy, was plugged into those kinds of thoughts, intentions, and actions that manifested the kind of desire that was in harmony with divine order and not the kind of misguided desires which led to lustful behavior and self-destructive consequences for self and society. So deliver me from the destroying deity because I shouldn't be in the scope of that destroying deity because I live in harmony with order. And they talked about deliver me from that divinity on the night, that of the reckoning of the destroying goddess. Then the text says, who then is it? And throughout the text, they make a statement, and then they ask a question, and then they answer the question. It's a call and response, just like we have in ritual practices in Afuraitkaitnit in North America and so forth, the call and response. Throughout the text, that call and response pattern exists. They make a statement, they say, what does this mean, or who then is this? And then they give a more detailed answer. And that way they explain the statements that they're making. This is found all throughout the text of Ancient Kemet. So it talks about Ra invoking that force in creation. His life force energy is brilliant and bright and shining. Nebsini says, I live in harmony with Ra, therefore my life force energy is connected with his, as well as Ra'et. My life force energy is shining and brilliant, and harmonious and vital. Therefore, please deliver me away from the divinity that would otherwise destroy the kind of spirits who didn't live in harmony. Deliver me from that deity, because I don't deserve that kind of fate, because I'm proving I lived in harmony with order. I avoided that kind of fate dealing with the night of the reckoning of the destroying goddess. The question comes, who then is it? And the answer is, as concerning that night of the reckoning of the destroying goddess, and we talked about her last night, Nehem Awa, or Nechimawa, or Nehem Mawit. In this text it says Awa, but her full name is Nehem Awa. It says, as concerning the night that of the reckoning of the destroying goddess, the night it is of the burning up of the enemies and of causing the destruction of the wicked at its block, of the slaughter of the spirits. Who then is this? It says Nemu, who is the mutilator of Alsar. Otherwise, it is Apep. So the night of the destruction is talking about the reckoning goddess. She's the one who delivers the person away from those spirits who would otherwise destroy the individual. Apep is the wicked one that they're talking about. Apep is the one who mutilated the body of Alsar, but then eventually Alsar's body was mummified and purified and brought back together. But Apep is the one who's the mutilator of Alsar, which they're talking about. And it says, Apep, it is. Deliver me from that fate, because I was living in harmony with order. Those who are not living in harmony with order, then they get burned up by the reckoning goddess. They get destroyed by the reckoning goddess, and so forth. But deliver me from that fate. Then it says, he rises up with one head, having upon it Ma'at. Otherwise said, it is Heru. He rises up with two heads, one having Ma'at, the other having Isfet. He gives wickedness or Isfet to the worker of wickedness. He gives Ma'at to him that followeth after Ma'at. So when it talks about Heru rising up with two heads, one of the heads has Ma'at, the proper divine order, divine law, and so forth. He distributes that to those who live in harmony with Ma'at. The other head that rises up with wickedness, he destroys that and gives that to those who work Isfet or wickedness and eradicates them. Those of us who live in harmony with the forces in creation, live in harmony with Heru, live in harmony with Set when they're operating in their proper manifestations, then we're receiving the dispensation of energy from these forces in creation. We make proper decisions. The desires that we operate upon are natural desires. If it's hot outside and you're burning up and you're losing a great deal of water and you're sweating, then you have a desire to replenish yourself. You have a desire to fill yourself up with cool water and so forth. That is a natural desire. If you've been conditioned to believe that drinking spring water is not important and it's more important to drink Kool-Aid or alcohol and so forth in lieu of water, sweat and become hot and so forth, you'll seek out some Kool-Aid instead of seeking out some natural spring water. You've been conditioned by false ideas. You cut yourself off from the natural desire that's emanating from your nervous system, the shrine of Set. You cut yourself off from that natural desire. Then you follow a misguided desire, a conditioning, which is lust, misguided desire, and you consume that. It appears to replenish you, but in reality, it's polluting you. Then you create self-destructive consequences for yourself because you cut yourself off from the natural desire moving through the nervous system, the shrine of Set, and so forth, and then you move towards misguided desire. And your life force energy is constantly circulating through all your cells and so forth. That becomes compromised as well. Then your immune system becomes compromised and you open yourself up for the kind of bacteria that will assault your system that otherwise you could repel with ease. The same is true with regard to behaviors. Instead of being directed by the forces in nature who govern desire, like Set moving through the nervous system, you have a natural inclination to engage in certain thoughts, intentions, and actions, interactions with certain Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people who are living in harmony with order. making decisions about how you're going to operate, how you're going to move forward, how you're going to engage in nation building, what kind of relationships you're going to have, what kind of child rearing practices you're going to engage in, what kinds of institutions you're going to build. When you have that natural magnetic desire based on the instructions coming from the immune or the nervous system that Set governs, those instructions constantly moving through the nervous system coming from the divine brain, from the Ka, the soul, and so forth. When you receive those instructions through the divine nervous system, through Set, and it generates that magnetic pull towards following those kinds of instructions, then you make proper decisions. When you cut yourself off from that free flow of energy that's coming from Set through the nervous system, you cut yourself off from those properly formed instructions coming through the divine nervous system, and instead you move in another direction and follow the false ideas and the foolish formulations and the foolish beliefs that are put forward by the whites and their offspring, as well as brainwashed black people who follow the whites and their offspring. Now you follow those ideas, and you hold those ideas in your sphere of awareness, and you generate those luminous images of those ideas and the implications of those ideas, and those luminous images are given an electromagnetic field that has a magnetic draw to you, and you're drawn into those foolish ideas, and you make foolish behaviors as a result of that. Then you create lustful behaviors, which leads to self-destructive actions, which affects you negatively, but also affects the community negatively as well. And when you engage that kind of process, then you're also infecting that cardiovascular system function. Instead of aligning with Heru, that vital life force energy that gives you the power and vitality to obliterate foolish ideas and foolish desires and so forth, you then begin to truncate your life force energy, your expression of energy. You start utilizing that little residual solar force that you have instead of using that towards nation building, connecting with the right people, rearing your children in a proper fashion, building institutions, healing, defending, and all these various things. Instead of engaging in that kind of activity, you've truncated that life force energy to a sphere of activities where you're seeking to dominate, control, establish self-destructive institutions that perpetuate the ignorance that you've been infused with and so forth, and these things are perpetuated. But when you invoke Set or Eshu or Awuku Anansi and so forth through ritual, that's how you align with the divine nervous system, the communicative structure within the great divine body, so that you can receive proper messages on a consistent basis. When you engage the ritual process and invoke Heru through ritual, Heru is called Yao and Akan and Shango in the Yoruba tradition, and Hevioso and Vodun and so forth. When you invoke this deity, give offerings to this deity through ritual, invoke this divinity through ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, and so forth, then you open your spirit up, the shrine for Heru in your body, your cardiovascular system. You open yourself up to receive the dispensation of Heru consistently and perpetually, and his energy is constantly moving through the shrine in your body. So you not only receive his energy dispensation, but you also receive that ordered fusion, that morality on how to utilize that energy in a harmonious fashion for the betterment of yourself and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit society. When you open yourself to the energy of Set, Eshu, Legba, Awuku Anansi, and so forth, through ritual invocation, ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, and so forth, the instructions that are coming from that divine communicative structure within the great divine body, they're freely flowing through your nervous system as well, which is your miniature shrine in your body for the Set, for Legba, and so forth. So there's a constant free flow of energy from the divinity through his shrine within your body. And because his energy is constantly circulating from himself to your shrine within your body, then not only is there a dispensation of his energy properly structured, properly fused, but then the morality, the proper usage of those instructions is transmitted to you as well. So the desire that's manifest through the nervous system, that electromagnetic pull that you have, the desire you have, those desires are for things that are in harmony with order. You have a natural desire for certain foods, natural desire for certain activities, natural desire for connection with certain people, whether it's a spouse or rearing children or building institutions and so forth. You follow the natural desire moving through your nervous system, which is a shrine of Set within your body. If you cut yourself off from Set and try to follow the foolish ideas and thoughts and formulations and behaviors that were conditioned within you or are constantly being fed to you by this society or discarnate spirits who are trying to force nonsense upon you, then you cut yourself off from that proper flow of energy, the proper flow of instructions, and therefore your decisions become self-destructive. And then you make decisions that reflect the desire not for things that are harmonious, that will benefit you, self, and society, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit society, things that simply serve your own misguided desire, serve your lust, and therefore you have negative relationships with individuals of the opposite sex, negative relationships with family, negative relationships with people in the community, negative relationships with the people, with your children and so forth, and therefore those negative relationships portend a negative situation for the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community of which you are a component of. That's the relationship. So when we talk about Heru and Set, we're talking about the nervous system, which is Set, talking about the cardiovascular system, which is Heru. Those two shrines in the body constantly working in harmony with one another. We connect with the forces in nature that animate those physical shrines within our bodies. Then we have the vitality to nation build in a harmonious fashion. We have the instructions from the nervous system on the proper relationship building that we need to have in every facet of society. When we cut ourselves off, that vitality leads into self-destructive, domineering, ego-driven activities. When we cut ourselves off from Set, it leads to the desire to engage in certain kinds of behaviors or follow the kinds of instructions that only serve conditioned responses that manifest as lust, and that creates disorder all throughout society. There's a balance, there's a complementary relationship. So when you see these deities, when you see the head of Heru and the head of Set on the same body, now you know what you're looking at. When you look at those three pictures in succession, you have Set and Heru uniting the plants of the south and the north in balance. Then you see there are two heads on the same body in a complementary balanced relationship. And then you see Set on the prow of the boat of Ra. He's stabbing the real one who manifests disorder when that serpent, Apep, is trying to rise up and swallow the boat of Ra, and Set is cutting him down. That's the proper function of Set. When Set is in the front of the boat of Ra, Ra is operating through the sun boat, and Set is operating through the planet Mercury. This is why in ancient Kemet, the planet Mercury is the planet of Set. In the Akan tradition, Awuku is the planet Mercury and so forth. That's the planet of Set, the same thing in the Yoruba tradition and so forth. So you see Set, the planet Mercury, sitting right next to Ra, who's operating through the Aten, the sun. Set, the planet Mercury, is the closest planet to the sun, sitting in the boat of the sun and so forth, makes its orbit around the sun faster than any other planet, but it's because it's the closest to the sun and moving around the sun the fastest. It's also transmitting the energy of the sun and broadcasting it out to the rest of the solar system, wielding that energy as it's whipping around the sun. This is why Set is the messenger planet. This is why Set is in the front or the prow of the boat of Ra. And this is why Set also receiving that energy from Ra, that electromagnetic force that moves through the nervous system, is also able to spear Apep and keep Apep at bay. So this is what we're dealing with. These are the mechanics of overcoming, first of all, identifying lust, which is misguided desire, and then overcoming that, recognizing who these deities are, invoking them ritually in harmony, and understanding their roles in the body, roles in your spiritual development, and so forth. So we're going to, if there are any questions or comments in the chat room, you can hit that up. Hit the number 1 on the phone line if you have any questions or comments. We only have a few minutes left in the broadcast. We just wanted to get through that information. in some detail. And of course, when you look at our books, the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akan Fo, we go into detail about this kind of information. When you look at our book, KUKUU-TUNTUM, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, we go into detail cosmologically about the role of Set and Heru, as well as Asar, Set, Nebet-Het, Heru, and these various divinities and so forth. But we just wanted to touch on this specific form of Heru and Set with the two deities' heads on the same body so people can understand what we're really looking at, and to dispel this notion of Set being the evil character and so forth. When you understand their shrines in the body, you have a proper balanced perspective of who they are and what their functioning in the world is. And then you have the pathway to overcome misguided desire, lust, and so forth. And when you overcome that, you can equilibrate your character. Invoking Set, invoking Heru and balance, that's the pathway to equilibrating character and neutralizing lust or misguided desire. And we have a few minutes left, but before we get to a couple of questions on the phone line, but before we get to that, we just want to say we sent out a notification today. We are going to be updating very soon the information on our upcoming conference on the weekend of March 24th, 25th here in Washington, D.C., our third annual Etchy Sign Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference. We have the webpage up, of course, the different presenters and so forth. We are switching venues. We're going to have to switch the venue because of the increased cost. So the email that we sent out today, we have a crowdfund effort. This is the first time in 3 years that we had a crowdfund effort for our conferences. Of course, all of our conferences are free. All of our presentations around the country are also free, of course. And we also give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who attends. We've given away nearly 2,000 books for free through our free conferences and presentations around the country. And, of course, we're going to continue that, what we're doing here because of the increased cost of the venue. If you contribute to our crowdfunding effort for the Etchy Sign Conference, then you can receive the softcover version of the Etchy Sign book, that third journal, Etchy Sign Nhomar journal book that will be published on the day of the conference and released. You can get that softcover book in return for your contribution. So we have the Etchy Sign page on the website. We need to raise those funds as soon as possible because of the switch in the venue. And we'll put the information in the chat room right now. You'll also see it on our webpage and our Facebook page and so forth. But anyone who makes a contribution to our effort, you can receive the softcover version of the new Etchy Sign book, which will be released on that day. Also, we sent out an email. If you have a business, organization, or institution you would like to advertise in our book, go to our Etchy Sign page ASAP. We need your JPEG files of your business, organization, or institution. Email it up to us as soon as possible because we only have a couple of weeks left. We need to get the book formatted and so forth so it'll be ready. So if you have a business, organization, or institution you would like to advertise it in our book, send those JPEG files as soon as possible. Okay, so we're going to take a couple of calls and we'll be done. Michio on the phone line, number 8162. You had a question or a comment?
What's up, Brother Quincy?
What's up?
Do discarnate spirits have the ability to freely move about the way that the living do, or are they confined to wherever it is that they died?
Okay, so they're not confined to where they may transition. Very often they are drawn to those areas and the places where they frequented, and they're also drawn to people who are connected to their blood circle. And when they're people who are connected to their blood circle migrate to different parts of the world, then they have that magnetic draw to them because they're connected in that fashion. But they're also connected to the place where they transition. One reason for that is because as spirits of disorder, they have not overcome that magnetism, that misguided, that negative draw to that kind of behavior that's self-destructive. So if they were engaged in self-destructive behavior, similar to someone who's hooked on crack or heroin or something like that. That's not a natural desire within the body. Normally, if that kind of substance is introduced into the body, the first thing the body does is reject it. So it's not natural for us to be inclined towards drug use. But if you keep forcing these things into the body, then your body tries to develop a tolerance because your body is saying, okay, this fool is constantly forcing this stuff into the body. We're going to try to learn how to accept it so that we can survive long enough to maybe help this fool stop putting this stuff in the body. But if you keep assaulting your body with these substances, that pseudo-tolerance becomes a negative pseudo-attraction. And the body begins to crave it because you create, hybrid molecules and so forth, and they begin to crave the substances that you've been forcing on the body. And in the same fashion, and so then you have a negative attraction or so-called addiction to things that normally your body would instantly reject. In the same fashion, when people are engaged in self-destructive behavior, lustful behavior, malicious behavior, criminal behavior, and so forth, they develop a pseudo-attraction to that. Like we said, with regard to thought forms, ideas, luminous images that you hold in your sphere of awareness, when you generate an image or an idea, whether someone is dreaming or quote-unquote daydreaming or just, generating an image in their mind, anything that's an image, a geometric form, and is luminous, that's an entity. And every entity has its own magnetic field. And every magnetic field has an orbit, and depending on how prominent that entity is, that determines the strength of the orbit. So when you generate certain thought forms within your consciousness, and you hold those thought forms in your consciousness, whether they're forms that are based on something real or intelligent, harmonious, or if they're foolish ideas or false beliefs, you're plugging your life force energy into that luminous form, constantly refueling that luminous form, constantly refueling its little electromagnetic field and generating an orbit, and then you draw your spirit into the orbit of that thought form or that idea or that lustful desire. And when they engage in that kind of lustful behavior for years and they make their transition, they're still generating those lustful desires and images of desires to do certain things or imaging certain kinds of activities they would like to engage in, even though they're self-destructive, and they're constantly refueling negative desire. And then it locks them into that kind of behavior, and if it's connected to a certain region where they were engaged in that kind of activity or behavior, they're always hovering around that region that's associated with the images that they've been generating and refueling and repopulating within their consciousness for years. But then they're also connected to the blood circles, the sperm cells and ovum cells and the physical bodies of their relatives and so forth. That's a magnet for them. So wherever some of their people migrate to, then they migrate to as well.
Okay. Really appreciate the show tonight. Definitely needed to hear it. What I say.
Okay. I'll say that. Appreciate the call. Okay. And that's the key. So once again, when we talk about, sometimes people will talk about, when you're controlled by lust and so forth, you just need to focus on the, great immaterial non-existence and, just chant overcoming lust. That's not based on reality. We are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We are children of specific Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, and so forth. We come into the world. We incarnate assigned to specific forces in creation even before we get into the womb. Before we enter into the womb, we're drawn to Amanet and Amen. We're assigned a specific divinity that governs our head. That divinity installs itself in the head region of our spirit. Then we eventually are sent into the womb and are born into the world, and we are connected to a specific force in creation, as well as patriclan and matriclan divinities. And that confluence of energy makes up our unique spirit and so forth. So we have natural inclinations towards certain kinds of behavior. If we're a child of a fiery divinity, we have fiery inclinations, and it leads us to occupations and activities that manifest that fiery character, like military operations or policing operations and so forth. If we have a cool, watery divinity that governs our head, we are naturally inclined towards that kind of activity and so forth, and we engage in healing work and teaching and different things. So we come into the world assigned to specific divine organs or deities within the great divine body. And we operate within that capacity because that is our function. We have a natural function as Afuraitkaitnit people cells within the great divine body. But of course, even though we're children of different cells and organs of the great divine body, like liver cells are children of the liver, heart cells are children of the heart, spleen cells are children of the spleen, pancreas cells are children of the pancreas. They all serve their parent deity. However, all of them are affected by the nervous system, a major divinity which is governed by its set, and the instructions moving through the nervous system coming from the brain that give the proper instructions for every cell in every part of the body on how they need to operate moment to moment within the body and within the organal structure or glandular structure of which they are a component part. All the different cells of the different organs are affected by the major divinity operating through the cardiovascular system, which is governed by Heru, because the blood is pumped through the cardiovascular system and carries nutrients and life force energy that feeds every cell in the body. So these are two major regulatory systems within the body, and they touch all the cells, no matter what gland you're part of, no matter what head deity or head organ or head gland that governs you as a cell. Everybody's connected to the nervous system. Everybody's connected to the cardiovascular system. So no matter what deity we're operating under, we still must live in harmony, execute our function as part of an organ, execute our function as part of a gland, in harmony also with the nervous system and cardiovascular system. If we do not do that, if your spleen cells try to execute their functions in the spleen, but then they said to hell with what the instructions coming from the nervous system are saying, then they're going to create disordered behavior, misguided desire, misguided instructions that manifest as lust, and you're going to have a problem in your spleen. If they don't follow the direction, the energy, the infusion of energy coming through the bloodstream and the oxygen from the life force energy from the cardiovascular system, and they don't feed off of those nutrients and that life force energy, then they're going to degenerate, they're going to deteriorate, and instead of being vital and functioning and harmonious and building within the spleen, within the organ, quote-unquote nation building within the spleen structure, within the spleen nation, they're going to be self-destructive and dominating cells next to them until they self-destruct. And that's going to lead to negative behavior and, consequences for the body. So no matter what cell structure you're part of or organal structure, glandular structure you're part of, everybody's governed by the nervous system, everybody's governed by the cardiovascular system, everybody is connected to Set, everyone is connected to Heru. When you operate in harmony with both of those forces, those regulatory forces in balance, then your desires will be in balance and your move towards nation-building behavior will be in balance. If you get out of harmony with the nervous system, then you won't receive proper instructions or communications. You'll operate off of foolish communications or misguided communications. That leads to misguided desire and lust. If you don't live in harmony with the dispensation of energy that's being infused through the cardiovascular system, you're not going to receive the proper vitality. Then you're going to deteriorate, be self-destructive, and destructive to those who are around you. And instead of being someone who's administrating a harmonious government or regulation of affairs within yourself, within your family, within your society, you're going to be someone who's regulating the state of affairs that's self-destructive and negatively dominant and controlling, and that leads to self-destructive consequences as well. So we're going to have to end it here because we have another scheduled event after this. But if you have any other questions, just send us an email on Facebook or, our regular email address and so forth. And once again, please support our crowdfunding effort for the Etchisign Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference, 3rd annual, coming up March 24th, 25th here in Washington, D.C. We need to raise those additional funds as soon as possible for the shift in the venue So again, you can receive the book, the etchy sign book, the new book that will be released on that day as, our Yerase, our thank you for you contributing to that effort. Any contribution is welcome that will assist us not only in covering the cost of the venue, the new venue, but also for the travel expense for our out-of-town presenters and so forth. So Yerase for those who have contributed. We had a contributor today who made a contribution. We really appreciate that. And we've had a few other contributors as well. So it takes about 2 or 3 minutes. Just go to the site, the Etchy Sign site on our fundraiser page, and we appreciate that. So Yerase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast, and Yabesha Abio, we will meet again. What's that?